Guys, thanks for joining us here. I'm going to go straight into the slideshow here. So, yeah. So, yeah, my name is Gareth Kennedy, and I am lead coordinator on what we call NCD Field, which is really curious site beside the college up here in the Liberties in Dublin, which I'll talk more about. About myself, like I've 18 years of practice as a contemporary artist, and then about 10 years of practice teaching across third level at graduate, undergraduate, master's level. My own practice I would describe as being socially engaged and research intensive, and I've a background in sculpture, so it's also quite it's about materiality. So I would have produced work and exhibited work, fairly internationally, all across Europe for sure, the United States, and a few other countries. And I had the privilege of producing work abroad as well. So a lot of my work is site specific, and it's about kind of creating experimental material cultures that are then enacted in place by community. Often I make a film for that process, and always like a kind of understory to this kind of work has always been the ecological concern around things. Maybe not explicitly, but there was always that kind of economy of an ecology of things at play. I was always kind of like really interested in where things come from and where things go, the ethics behind that. I'm going to introduce briefly my other colleagues on this course who aren't here, but should you take up the course, they'll have the pleasure of meeting you. So this is Shodeen O'Sullivan, and Shodeen is a contemporary artist, again, socially engaged, and she works in the area of critical ecologies, connecting multidisciplinary teams and partnerships using creative participatory art methodologies to reveal, find solutions, and work towards creating just multi-species futures and collective imaginaries at a time of climate crisis. So Shodeen has huge experience of working in the Liberties, over 10 years, working kind of in an expanded sense within the Liberties of Dublin, within a kind of community kind of context there, across different sites with different community groups. Whilst I suppose my own particular expertise would be focused, I've probably managed about 100 student projects on Thomas Street. I ran NCD Fields for 4 years. I built up over 500 hours teaching outside, on location, on the site. So this is a kind of peculiar, nuanced understanding of the place, and coupled with Shodeen's skills and experience in the broader context and community, it's really a very kind of rich collaboration we have. And then of course in the corner there we have Mark Clare, and Mark Clare, an extremely acclaimed artist, again has undertaken residencies and commissions internationally, and Mark really brings a wealth of experience to the course, and kind of links in kind of different skill sets, I suppose, and ways of thinking, which is very, very important, as I'll explain with our methodology in running this course. We don't proclaim to know it all or be experts, and we're very much in a process of learning and becoming through running this course. It's a dynamic, lively thing, and so Mark, he's over 30 years of experience as a fine art lecturer, and he's currently a part-time lecturer at NCD. So he's also invited guest lecturer in the MFA in Crawford, Cork. He's an MA in film at the Louis Lumiere École Nationale Supérieure in Paris, and he's also taught in Columbus State University in the United States, as well as Gray School of Art at Aberdeen. So between the three of us, I don't know, we've probably got about 80 years experience collectively. Well, 70 years experience. So and we're just very lucky to convene around this course, which is an absolute fascination of ours. So I'm gonna move through. There we have a view of NCD Field. So what is this course about? It's It's about working methods, skills, theories relating to the intersections of contemporary art with ecology. I would expand this notion of contemporary art into a term that we might just say is culture. How does culture and our society interface with ecology? Because that's really important. We're looking to, and we have thus far attracted really, really eclectic people with really eclectic backgrounds, not just within the arts, not just within the visual arts, but indeed across different specialties, from horticulture to law to science to theatre. You know, that's what really makes the course rich, is when we attract like a lot of different types of people with a lot of different experience and skill sets. So a special emphasis on the course is learning through doing, a series of workshops and situated environmental learning. And you know, we're working directly and in an embedded fashion in what we'll call this novel ecology. I'll come back to that. You know, so what's really particular about the field at graduate and undergraduate level is about 80% of all classwork or work is done outside under the sky. And the kind of thinking there is to have kind of direct experience with things. And also, you know, a kind of firm belief that we mightn't solve the biodiversity crisis, or we mightn't reckon with the biodiversity crisis or climate crisis and so on indoors. You know, we're not going to sit down on computers and come up with remedies for this. We need very direct engagement and effective experience with these things. So that kind of outdoor environmental aspects are really, really particular about this course, and very, very special which has a kind of remarkable impacts, and I can really testify to that, you know. So this is the NCD field. I don't know if any of you know it. I'm not going to tell you too much about it, because we do like there being a sense of reveal and discovery. And certainly if you were to come in a course, we want you to arrive with your curiosity and sense of intrigue intact. There's a kind of process of getting to kind of know this place and understand this place. And we have a way of revealing that, its story and whatnot, you know. But it is this remarkable kind of green enclave that's beside the college, the NCAD there. And it's got a layered history of use and disuse. And that's what makes it really, really interesting as a kind of layered kind of site. So things we do at graduate and postgraduate level is students and learners are to collectively and individually reckon with the past, present, and future potentials of this site, you know. And when I say this site is like a laboratory, because we're very keen that the work we do in the field and the way of thinking and the way of studying in the field and research we do, really, really important. It's transferable and it's transmittable elsewhere. So once the field is a very particular special place, you know, it's you know, we're invested in giving you guys transferable skills, you know. So again, it's off-grid outdoor learning. It's working with the head, the hearts, and the hands. The hands, we live in a very head-based cerebral culture. And we try and balance that with the work we do in the fields with kind of manual, tactile work. And also the heart there might refer to kind of matters of care and a kind of emotional intelligence. We strongly believe a combination of these things is very important. We're kind of reckoning with some of the material we have to reckon with. So, and this is a kind of thing we're also charged with doing, is developing this idea of nature cultures. So all one word, not a duality, not a separation between nature on one hand and culture on the other. Nature cultures for the 21st century. And that's derived from a theorist called Donna Haraway. And most importantly, the work we do in the field, we're trying to reckon with the field as what to the developer's eye is a site of dereliction or a brownfield site. And we're trying to critically reconsider that as a site of novel ecology. Now, I'm going to come back to that term, novel ecology, a little bit later, but it's one of our key words. So this is, I don't know where you guys come from. I don't know if you've ever heard of Deleuze and Guattari. These are theorists, French and Italian theorists, and they came up with this idea of rhizomatic pedagogy. you know. A rhizome is, if you think of a nettle, a bush of nettles, it's kind of distributed kind of root system, kind of complex root system with nodes that pop up here and there. So you might contrast rhizomatic learning and rhizomatic pedagogy. And I'm using these as metaphors. Metaphors we use are important. You might contrast that with like a sense of arboreal learning, which is to say a tree that grows, a tree of knowledge, with someone on the top of that tree, me or Shoding, that apparently knows it all, and you guys are trying to climb this tree of knowledge, you know, to gain access to what we know. Rhizomatic is a very different metaphor. It's a very different approach. I might outline that down here. You know, ideas are multiple, they're interconnected and self-replicating. So there's many ideas in the world all at once. There's no, you know, one idea that necessarily trumps another. It acknowledges that learners come from different contexts, need different things, and they have different embodiments. That's really important, that we have a kind of bespoke, we deliver a course of education that lets you find yourself within it and lets you apply your life experience within it. That it's not just me or Mark or whatever knowing it all and trying to kind of, well, ram it down your neck, you know. So interestingly, rhizomatic learning is non-linear. It's responsive to events and circumstances. It's a commitment to different paths that interweave. Because we teach outside in an environment, in an ecology, it's dynamic, it's alive, and things happen. Unexpected things happen. Sometimes magical things happen, and we need to be open to that. We need to be responsive to being outdoors, learning outdoors. So we don't just arrive in the field and you know, put our head down and become unresponsive at the expense of all the many events and things that are going on there. This is difficult. Rhizomatic learning attempts to be non-hierarchical. The teacher's a guide. I've written there, I've only 20 more years experience. That's what I use when I speak to my undergraduates. You know, so what's important is the good pedagogy, the good learning should be transformative for everyone that's involved in it. So to put form on that, if I was to, if we were delivering the course and we knew the answers to the course already, you know, we had all the answers, myself, Shodin and Mark, the questions mightn't be that interesting we're asking. So we have to kind of create, like myself, Shodin and Mark, our job is to kind of guide you, to steward you, to create structure and form around this. But am I pains to say we don't have all the answers? Now, having said that, it's not an open-ended thing. It's not like an anything goes. We're experienced guides, and you know, we know how to put structure on this. You know, so in case any of you think this is too exploded, you know, this is really important. This line, the community is the curriculum. This is really important. It matters to us that we're in the Liberties, a really interesting part of Dublin. It matters to us that we're in Dublin City in the 21st century, which is, you know, a little bit neoliberal. It matters to us that we're in a particular place called the Field, that was an old whiskey factory and was a car park, and then was a site of dereliction, and then was a site, an urban haven of horticulture, and then is now a kind of wild or rewilded space in the middle of Dublin 8. All of these things matter, and it matters who's around us, what people. So you do this course, we'll be intersecting rigorously with the community around us. We have ways of doing that. So you get a real sense of place through the course. Now, of course, because we're dealing with ecology, we extend the concept of community beyond the human into non-human worlds. So Mr. Fox, who lives on site, is also a part of our community. We have one rabbit that lives on the site, also part of the community. We have a peregrine falcon that lives in the tower of St. John's Lane Church. We extend the sense of community to these species as well as everything else in between, ladybirds and worms and feral kale plants. So anyway, finally, knowing is a long process of becoming. This is what rhizomatic pedagogy acknowledges. You know, we live our lives, we learn, we grow, we evolve. And you know, there's no quick fix. The knowledge we have today, the information we have today, you know, it's if we're honest about it, it's dynamic. It will shift and change. So we need to move with that shift and change. And science will qualify this all the time. But science every 20, 25 years comes up. It kind of upends maybe our appreciation of things. And helps us see afresh. Art is the same. Ecology is a dynamic, living, shifting thing. And it's not incidental. I'm showing you an image of fungi there. Fungi are our understanding of fungi and mushrooms and mycelial networks and what they do in the world has in the last 10, 15 years just undergone like a huge perceptual shift. And these are very, very exciting, phenomenal shifts in our understanding. And they're really, really important for us as cultural producers to reckon with and to align with. And if you are a visual artist, how do we make these things visual, you know? So that's the field there. When I found it after the pandemic, the field was born out of the pandemic, this teaching outdoors, the need to move outside. And in the field, we adopt 3 methodologies, 3 E's: experimental, experiential, and environmental. And that's just a way of acknowledging different ways of learning, that there's cognitive, intellectual learning. There's also material learning. We had a ceramicist on the last course, and they could literally kind of think through making with clay. It's experiential. Our experience in the field matters. We love that everyone that does the course is an individual, has a subjectivity, has a set of life experiences. We're really interested in how different people perceive the field subjectively. And we're interested in how all those experiences, we pool them together to create like this expanded understanding of what this place is. Because no one person can do it on their own. That's part of our thinking, you know. There's also, if you don't get that already, a heavy emphasis on the philosophical thinkers who would be involved in what we call critical ecologies. But we try and keep that applied. If we read some heavy philosophical texts, we're interested in how that's metabolized through action in the field, through doing something in the field, through making something in the field, through eating something in the field. We're very interested in kind of how we metabolize maybe complex philosophical thought into action. We're pragmatists at the end of the day. And then, of course, we also learn emotionally. We value the wonder some of you might feel in seeing a peregrine falcon flying over the Liberties. We value that. We value the joy you would take getting a glimpse of Mr. Fox. We value, you know, how much you might enjoy some of the foraging in the field and some of the gorgeous things you might find there unexpectedly. We really value your feeling for these things. This is a slide I use because it's quite complex. Why I'm teaching an institution, it's very linear structure. It's 30 weeks. And what's always difficult is how to graft this idea of seasonal or environmental time onto what is an abstract and artificial human construct of the academic year, you know? So this is kind of really, really important. And what's quite challenging in the field for me teaching at undergraduate, this is why we love when you guys come and do it, is the coursework ends in May, just when everything's starting to grow. So the students disappear for the summer and we kind of miss the summer, which is kind of interesting because it lets the field really go wild. But we miss the kind of horticultural calendar in this part of the world. So when you guys come along, you guys would arrive on June 20th on the solstice. We'd have a little kind of event to kind of entertain the solstice, to kind of entertain cyclical time, to honor cyclical time. But you'll be there into July when it's just a real haven of life. It really comes alive to life. And that gives us facility to conduct horticulture and to eat from the field, you know, and to also just kind of care for some of the things we find there. So I have to draw up this diagram a bit better. This speaks to the kind of field's ethos. And we've been developing this over the last few years. And you know, if some of the words and language I'm using are alien to you, that's okay. It is a university level 9 course. That's okay. You know, we need to kind of work on our understanding with these, and I'm going to come back to how we do that, because we do that together. But three things we know for sure in the field is we're interested in the field being a taskscape. Now, what is a taskscape? A taskscape is not a landscape. A landscape, if you know your history of landscape painting or whatever, it suggests a fixed point of view and a way of looking at things that are maybe, you know, a landscape gives a sense of the unchanging, the timeless. It's a kind of optical way of seeing place. Taskscape is rather different. Taskscape is about the different practices or the different types of work, human and non-human, that are applied there that make that place look like that way. So if I give you an example of a taskscape, I've mentioned Mr. Fox already. Mr. Fox, as a taskscaper, eats 6 rats a night. That's so research says. You know, general kind of research on urban foxes. They're good for 6 big rodents a night. That's doing us a really, really great service in the field in managing that kind of population. And we would frame that as how that fox kind of taskscapes. That's one of the ecological services, which is a term I'm not really fond of, the fox provides for us in the field. And another taskscape might be a student who introduced a particular plant for dyeing and holds a workshop there twice a year to dye when this particular plant is in flower or when it's best to do it. So you can imagine the field is a taskscape. It's a kind of layered place of all these different practices, human and non-human. And that's how we're trying to kind of evolve it. Not as a landscape. If we evolve it as a landscape, the problem is we might get a drawing, a digital image of how the field should look, you know, with beautiful paths and beautiful, perfect digital trees. And then we'll be kind of stuck in form. We'll have to keep making the field look like that image, if you know what I mean. And we don't want that. The field is a dynamic, lively place. I've said that before, I'll say it again. Another term you might be or may not be familiar with, the field is a commons, where the field is an experiment in the commons. And the commons is this idea of an open source space with respect to human and non-human worlds. So the commons, or commoning, is a space in between public and private. If the field was private, it would be the preserve of just the owner, whoever owns it. If the field was public, it would be the preserve of, well, the public, the generic public, but also Dublin City Council probably, you know, would manage it. Like, so the commons it's a kind of gray area in between, that we're interested in people accessing the field who share our ethos and have interesting practices to bring there, and you know, we'll use the place responsibly, not irresponsibly. If a lot of people were to use the field irresponsibly, you get the crisis of the commons, which is where the field is denigrated by by our presence there. So this idea of the commons is very, very interesting. It's something we feel very strongly about. It's something we feel we need to kind of, you know, rehearse and also try and extend into the lives and minds of our students. That you know, should they get access to space in the future, how do you common that space? How do they make that space friendly to kind of dynamic, eclectic usership, rather than a kind of very controlled, fixed way of kind of managing space? We feel that's really, really important, and there's more in that. We do a lot of work in the commons. Finally, the field is a novel ecology, and a novel ecology is exactly what it is. It's a new ecology. That is to say, it's an ecology or a habitat that has no easy equivalent anywhere else, because it's a really unusual hodgepodge of flora, fauna, and fungi. And so I have a term there. Novel ecology is a haven for biodiversity and unexpected human and non-human entanglements. So bear with me, I'm going to show you an example in the field why it is a novel ecology. So this is an image of a ceramics student, undergraduate student, and she is looking, this is the first time we were in the field. We were making jam from Dublin's oldest fruit tree, which is in the Liberties, 400's pear tree. The class was about what's wild and what's domestic. Making jam is pretty domestic. The field at the time was entirely feral and wild. And lo and behold, we're looking at a female sparrowhawk there that spent the whole day hunting in the field while we were there. Now, it's not just a female sparrowhawk, it's a female sparrowhawk sitting on an echium, which is a plant that originates in the Canary Islands. It's a kind of an exotic plant. It's also called, I think, a bee hotel. And then underneath the echium, you'll see what is feral kale. That's self-seeded kale. It's kale that would have been planted sometime in the last decade, probably, well, we'll jokingly say by hipsters, because kale was very popular with hipsters. Hipsters are gone. The kale is still there. It's self-seeding, very interesting. We use this in a lot of coursework. And then in the background, you have what's called Buddleia, which is this really originally from China, a plant that is absolutely prolific across like disused urban sites. And again, is also quite good for pollinators. What I should say about the kale as well is it's on a mound of compost, man-made compost, you know, made from horse manure, leaves from the Phoenix Park, and just about anything else a visionary man, Tony Lau, could get his hands on to compost. And there's a fox's burrow or den, in that compost. So this is like this is what we mean by new nature, novel ecology. And because this stuff was all left alone during the pandemic, it's found its own kind of balance and it's got its own system of life. And this is very, very interesting because it speaks to kind of resilience, and it speaks to what lives in spite of us, and what you know, we've got a lot to learn from that, how we might blend and marry with that. But certainly having a sparrowhawk in the mix as an apex predator is absolutely spectacular. You know, it's a real privilege. And this is in the Liberties, which is a green impoverished zone. We can talk more about that. Shodin worked on a project called Mapping Green Dublin, and the Liberties has 900 centimeters cubed available green space per citizen. That's publicly available green space. That's about the size of a dustbin lid. So it's a profoundly green impoverished zone. Yet within that, we have this wonder that is a novel ecology that attracts apex predators like peregrine falcons, foxes, and sparrowhawks. So, and we're interested in how we sustain the field, that we don't lose this complexity, this non-human complexity, but by the same token, we want to make it available to the community. You know, so that's a real challenge. We want this wildness to be available to, you know, a 9-year-old boy or girl that lives in Oliver Bond flats. How do we do that? How do we make those encounters happen? That's a really good question. I'm going to go into some course structure here. Just looking at the time, I'm half an hour in. That's not so bad. So, should you take this course, you would begin on the summer solstice, the longest day, and you'd be directly continuing on from the guys that did the diploma, who would just finish up the day before. So they're going to finish with a kind of summer solstice celebration, and you guys would begin with a summer solstice celebration. So that's again affirming seasonal environmental time in the field, the longest day, you know, and we do particular things to value that day. So should you do the course, you would begin with the principles section, and this would lead to a certificate in art and ecology. So that's 5 credits in university speak, and that would be attained through 4-week engagement with 1 day a week immersive, full contact. So the 4-week course for principles is plotted onto the summer. So we do things that are particular to summertime. Okay. And so it's a day a week of immersive. And either side of that, you're given tasks, exercises, readings, screenings, and listening. We like people to listen to material as well in preparation for each day. So you arrive and you're primed. You know, you're ready. You hit the ground running. And then over the course of an immersive day together, and it's not a boot camp. It's a very kind of gentle, very kind of gentle managed day together. You know, it's what's important is we spend the day together outside learning. But it's really important you've done that material. So you arrive and you're primed and your head is full of certain new ideas that you want to talk to your fellows about, you know. And we also want to explore through practical activity and agency in the field. So principles, and it sounds like Shodi, Mark, and myself have all the answers. We don't. But what we like principles to be about is establishing a sense of togetherness. So who you are and why you come together. And also common terms of reference and understanding of both the field itself, but also this discourse or this topic we call critical ecologies, which is a kind of cultural interrogation of ecological and environmental thought and action. So learners, and we'll call you guys learners, you're not students when you do the course, because some people who've done the course could run the course. Learners develop this understanding in common with one another. That's really important, that we learn together. And that's one of the things we institute is a course glossary. And that's where you guys populate that glossary week after week with your own terms and words. And we share and we pool all that together. So we're creating this like language and way of speaking to this place together. And that's really, really important. So learners develop this understanding in common with one another. Okay, so this principles lays the foundation for progression to diploma, but it's a standalone course in its own right, and it's resolved by a review day where the group common their knowledge in the field together. So that's a day. Us, Mark Shudin and me, having led 3 weeks, there's then this moment where you guys, you get to present, you get to show, and you get to kind of common your knowledge. So that's very process orientated. We're not that interested in you coming up with the masterwork at that stage. It's about how it's about that provocation, how you might common your knowledge on a particular facet of the field that you've been drawn to and you've researched. So I'll just show this gentleman here sitting on the bench. That's Marcus Collier. He's from a research group in Trinity called Novel Eco, which is anthropologists and ecologists and scientists studying these novel ecologies in Ireland, but also internationally. And we had Marcus in to kind of conduct a bio blitz in the field to find out how many species are here, you know. So then we get this like huge list of about 200 different species, okay? But then a list is kind of dead and uninteresting as a data set. What we've become interested in is the relationships between species. And what we're interested in you guys in the course is how you might take a species under your wing and really go for a deep dive into that species, you know, ecologically, environmentally, culturally, socially, you know, economically, mythologically, folklorically, how you might go for a deep dive into that species. And what you have at the end of the course, this day of commoning, is you have like, you know, 12 to 16 people presenting on a species and commoning their knowledge around that species. And it affirms again to me, I will never know it all, no matter how long I spend in there, because different subjectivities have different ways of looking at different species, you know, and how they might work with those species as a medium for kind of understanding or learning, you know. So Marcus, that's something we promised in the principles. If we can't get Marcus back, we get another person called Lorraine Archer, who's a really accomplished ecologist, And again, that's our way of kind of interfacing scientific and ecological rigor with our cultural, endeavor, which is really, really important. The field is transdisciplinary. It's a very important tenet of it. Finally, you moved on. I hope to finish up shortly. Account collaboration, practice, and capstone. If you moved on from principles, you would do another module, collaboration. Then you do practice. Then you do capstone. So again, this will be the full commitment towards the diploma. And each one of those new modules is plotted onto another season. So collaboration happens in autumn, winter. Practice, which we're about to institute this week with our current group, that's the spring moment. And then the capstone is the summer. So you have the opportunity to go full circle in the field, one whole year in the field of thought and engagements and musing about it. And at the end of that, you get a diploma, So again, these are seasonally responsive and site-specific responsive modules, but they're never parochial. They're also, we're thinking and we're taking in ideas, from globally, and so those modules did build successively on principles, which is its own standalone thing, to give learners a more comprehensive experience both the field and critical ecology's discourse. And again, that's going to culminate in a day where learners coordinate and host an event, quite a large event in NCAD field. Again, we don't know how public we can go with this because the field is a particular site. Once there's more than 20 people in the field, something is lost. Plus, you get, it's not good. It's not good for the flora and fauna when there's too many humans. I'm going to give an example of what we're doing this week. Kind of, we're engaging like this practice, and this is where we're going to look at companion species. We're going to go across to Molyneux Yard Stables. We're going to collect horse manure, which is a rich history in urban cities of growing food from horse manure. This would have been lost with the automobile. And this is something we do. We do a soil procession or a manure procession. And this is a tradition we do every trimester, where we've sent material out to students to kind of reckon with soil, but also this concept called terrestrialization by a theorist called Bruno Latour, who says we have to come back down to earth. Nobody's grounded, and it's important how we come back to earth, that we don't come back to earth and go parochial or nativist or whatever. He's got a very interesting novel idea of kind of how we might reaffirm relationships with soil, with land, but not in a exclusionary way, So sorry there. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a soil procession with the group. We haven't seen the group since spring. So to hit the ground running, we make ourselves public. They've been shown a load of artwork around artists that use procession and parade and carnival in their work. And then we'd go to the Hugh Lane to have a talk by Bina Choi, who has run for 15 years in the Netherlands an institute called Casco, which has been involved in this concept of the commons. So again, this happens on the day we get together. And then we would return to the field to kind of reckon with the material given, but also to come up with a collective planting plan, what we would grow in the field soil during this time, what crop we might agree upon together that we would grow and then harvest together. Or maybe we would grow it for you guys, So this is just kind of an example of what I'm working on this week with the group to kind of get them back together. And that's the field as it is now. It's everything. This is going to take off now in the next few weeks. Now I've been asked to speak to career opportunities, and I might just kind of use these two quotes. The climate crisis is not just an environmental crisis; it's a crisis of creativity and imagination. It's by T.J. Demos. So we need cultural thinkers, actors and makers and thinkers to interface with these kind of things. It's something the field works a lot on, this idea of nature being externalized, nature being elsewhere, the wild being elsewhere, the environment being elsewhere, and the wild being in the Wicklow Mountains or in Connemara or something. So we're very interested in closing that distance, and we do that through shifting perception, shifting understanding, and that's a kind of cultural pursuit, and it's a creative pursuit. It's an aesthetic pursuit, and it's really, really important, and that's the kind of work we would do with you guys in the field. How do we shift this perception? And we would hope to give you skills that are transferable and transmissible, and skills that you can bring into your own career, your own line of work, whatever that might be, to kind of augment where you find yourself and what you do, your practice or your work. And then the other one here is, again, this is Ireland's 4th National Biodiversity Action Plan. So, and this is a quote from it: "It strives for a whole of government, whole of society approach to governance and conservation of biodiversity." So this is now a societal concern. It's a societal and cultural concern, our biodiversity. It should have always been, but it hasn't been. Now here we find ourselves. So the aim is to ensure that every citizen, community, business, local authority, semi-state and state agency has awareness of biodiversity and its importance, and of the implications of its loss, while also understanding how they can address the biodiversity emergency as part of a renewed national effort to act for nature. So that's this is great, this biodiversity plan. It's great, but as with any plan, how do we enact it? How do we put it to work? And for us in the field, we think we have a laboratory that can equip people to put some of this put some of this language to work, to actually work towards impact. I'm going to finish with a couple of more slides. That's the field as an example of taskscaping, not landscaping, an array of different practices going on there. And then I'm going to just kind of show you this slide. This is a fungi harvest. If you do the course, you will go on a fungi harvest in the field in the winter, spring, or in the winter, autumn, winter. And that's a selection of the incredible fungi life we have there, So it's a model we use: life attracts life. And really, a take home from the field is, for your life, for your practice, is we promote biophilia. And biophilia is the love of living things. And we really kind of think we're really interested how you might, if you haven't already, take on biophilia and really integrate it into your life, your practice, your work. And it's really very important, we feel.